Okay, well, we lived on the farm. My dad was the ruler of the household. When he said something, he meant it. He was a hard-working man, and he had some strange ideas. He couldn't understand, excuse me, how a person could sleep with the sun shining. The Bible said a man was to earn his living by the sweat of his brow. To him, that meant manual labor. Consequently, he couldn't understand why people like doctors and lawyers charged for their service because they didn't sweat. And when you got old enough to go to school, you had to work. We got up early, done the chores. We had cows, mules, chickens, hogs, and all this to feed and take care of. And that had to be done before we go to work. But when the sun rose, it was time to go to the fields and work. When you got old enough to go to school, you was old enough to go to the field and work. And my mother would get up and cook breakfast while Dad got out and fed the livestock. And then up in the morning a ways when she got done with her housework, she would come on to the field and work also. And I remember I'd get hungry up around 11 o'clock, something like that. And I'd think, boy, it's got to be 12 o'clock in this time to go to lunch. And I'd ask Dad, he'd usually be plowing somewhere close by. Isn't it lunchtime? Shouldn't we be going home? He didn't have a watch, but he put his hand up over his forehead and looked. Oh, no, son, says, it's not even 11 o'clock yet. You have time to hold another round. And so that's what he believed in. Sundown was quitting time. You could come in and then start doing the evening chores. And my mother worked in the field with the rest of us. She was a hard worker. Now, my mother only had about a first-grade education. My father very possibly had a third-grade education. They had both went to school. They only had one book in those days. They called it the Blueback Speller. And you could go to school from 5 or 6 years old till you got 25 if you wanted to, but this was the only book you had. And they learned things like the days of the week, how to tell time. They learned the signs of the moon and what they meant. And this old picture you see in the almanac of a human body with open bowels, and the signs can be in the head, the chest, the bowels, or down in the legs, and all of this had meanings to do with planting plants and growing vegetables, because the one I remember for sure is if the sign was in the stomach and you planted seeds, they'd rot instead of grow. And they was right on that. And I remember one time specifically that Dad come in the house and told me, he says, better get out and get in your wood. It was getting cold weather, and we'd carry in firewood to build a fire in a fireplace when it was cold. And he says, the wind's going to be up in a little while. And he says, it's going to be freezing cold. And I asked him, how thunder do you know that the wind's going to come up? He says, well, there's a big circle around the moon and it's got a star in it. That means the winds are going to blow. And I thought, well, I'd better go out and get the wood just because he said so. And so I got out and got in the wood, and that time he was right. In 15 minutes, the wind was huffing and puffing, and it was cold. My brothers and sisters, all of them consisted by age, as being my oldest brother, Sarah was my oldest sister, and they're the two that had the nephew and the niece that was older than I was. And then Lorna, and those three were married and gone from home before I was born. And then the dead baby died at 8 days old, a girl, and then Howard and Shank, Lucille, myself, and Jim. And all of us lived up to be 60 years plus in age. Is dead now. The niece is still alive. And I had one brother that left home. Dad, I guess, was pretty rough on him. And they were hitching up the mules and stuff to the wagon when he was 12 years old. And Dad got mad about something, and he said Dad pulled a brake stick out of the wagon and hit him in the head with it and knocked him out. And he said when he come to, we lived up on a hill, that he just walked off down the hill and he didn't even know where he's going. He had a few clothes on his back and not a dime in money. And it was 5 years and 20 days before we ever seen or heard tell of him again. And he had been up in Kentucky and working in the coal mine. And he said the way he got a job, that there was a coal mine come out of the side of the hill, and they had a little train that they was hauling the coal out with, and said they run out on a big high trestle and dumped the coal. And he said the driver, operator of that train quit because the trestle was so shackly and moving it, he was afraid he was going to tumble down with it. And he says, I asked for that job and got it because nobody else would have it. And so this was his first job. I don't know yet how he got from North Carolina or how long it took him to get to Kentucky. But that's where he ended up. And then he came home and stayed one summer, and after he was 18, by the end of that summer, and he went to the Army and went to Hawaii, and he was in the infantry in Hawaii, and he met a guy from Florida. They got to be good buddies, and when they got out of the Army, they both went back to Florida, and that's where he got married, raised his family, and lived for the rest of his life. And so now all of the brothers and sisters are dead. I'm the only child out of 8 still alive. Now I had one sister that died as a baby that was older than even Howard was. He was, let's see, Howard, Lorna, the girl, was the 3rd child, and the dead baby was the 4th one. And then Howard and Shank, Lucille, myself, and Jim was the family. And so we had Pretty tough life, but we made it.